All right, guys, so now we've got the bows up. They're suspended in place. We've got tech screws holding them in place. Our next step is going to be to get the purlin. Now, the purlin is going to kind of be like a spine that ties all this together. We'll make sure, you know, these bows right here, they've got a little bit of wiggle room. As big as they are, the span that they are, we want to make sure that we keep our 4-foot spacing that we have down here on the ground all the way throughout, so we have even gaps throughout the entire greenhouse. So what we're doing here, we're not going to put any tech screws in at the moment. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take our saw cut swedge and put it together here. Now the purlin on this particular house should come in 7-foot, 3-inch sections. And what we want to do is we want to go ahead and piece it all together. And now we're not going to put our final screws in here. We don't want it to be that tight. What we want to do though is go ahead and make a mark on our purlin. So if I go to every ground stake now, and I'm just going to put one line right in the middle of every ground stake, right in the middle of every bow. And that way, as we go to hang this purlin, and we go to secure it with our purlin clamps, we'll make sure that no matter where we're at through the travel of the bow from side to side, that we're going to keep that 4-foot spacing in between the bows. All right, so now that we've kind of dry fit everything together, for the ease of putting these pieces up, what we like to do is go ahead and every other joint, we do want to put a screw in. Now what that's going to do is put 2 pieces of the purlin together. Now as we put the 2 pieces of purlin together, it's going to go from 7 foot to 14 foot. Should still be manageable. If you are doing the house by yourself, it may be easier just to make your marks and screw it together in the air. It makes the process go a little bit faster if you can do it on the ground, but it's not completely necessary. This is just kind of a little tip on how we get through a little quicker. So we've put the 2 pieces together here. We're gonna skip the second joint. Now instead of 4 7-foot pieces of pipe for the purlin, all I've got to handle with my help is going to be 2 14-foot pieces. I do want to go ahead and make a statement here. You know, 2 14-foot pieces is 28 feet. This house is 24 feet long. So you'll notice we've gone ahead and pre-marked everything, and we do in fact have 3.5, 4 feet of purlin hanging out past this house. We're going to go ahead and suspend the purlin even with the excess hanging out. And what this is going to do is make sure that we've made our marks correctly. We don't want to pre-cut anything in case we're just a little bit off. When we get it hung up there, we're going to take our Sawzall and we're going to cut it flush with the end wall bow. That way it doesn't protrude any and risk tearing your end wall film. I know we keep saying you can do it all by yourself. You can do it all by yourself. And I know we've got Mike and Keith and John, and we've got people in and out all day today. So I do want to show you, I mean, if you are going to end up doing this by yourself, you don't have to put this all together in 14-foot sections. We could take a purlin clamp and go ahead and put it over the bow. You can pre-suspend one side. You know, it's 7 feet. It's pretty fairly simple to balance here. So as you're working above your head on a ladder even, you could be between bows and put your clamp in place. You still want to make sure you put it together on the ground. Once you've made your marks, you can work with all 4 individual pieces or however many pieces you have with your particular kit. The only reason, again, that we're putting these pieces together, it's going to simplify it for us. We're going to have extra hands to do this. But if you're going to start, as long as you make sure your lines are there, of course, we'll be a little bit overhead. I just don't have my ladder ready. You would want to make sure your lines are in place, and you can loosely hang one of the purlin clamps on there. We'll have the nuts and bolts, and you can just hand tighten those 1 or 2 threads. And what that'll do is allow you to make any adjustments to your next bow as you go ahead and secure that clamp. All right, so we're gonna move forward as if I was doing this by myself, and then we're gonna get the rest of the guys over here to knock it out. We wanna talk about the hardware here to mount the purlin. These 2 horseshoe pieces, if you see on your packing slip that you have, I'm gonna throw an arbitrary number out, 13. What you're gonna count of these horseshoe pieces is 26 pieces because 2 creates 1 bracket. Show you the ears here. It's got the square cut for a carriage bolt to go through it. So we want where it's already horseshoe shaped to sit on top of our bow. Now for the end walls, because any of these rough edges could risk the integrity of our end wall film, we use a 2-hole strap. Now this 2-hole strap is gonna go on the end wall bow, and we're gonna pre-screw one of our tech screws in the middle here just to create a pre-drilled hole for us. And then that will be hung up so that we keep with a screw through the middle and the 2 screws, of course, on the ears here, holding it in place. That'll keep the end wall from shifting on that and allowing it to protrude any further out, risking our end wall film's integrity. I'm not gonna worry about my 2-hole straps until the very end. It's gonna take both my hands to do that, so I'm gonna toss those over with the rest of my hardware for just a minute. What I'm gonna do to secure this in place, to do this by myself, I'm gonna go ahead and take my nuts and bolts up here with me. I've got my marks pre-made. And I know that this piece of pipe I can balance very well right here. I'm gonna pre-hang my purlin bracket over the bow. Go ahead and get a nut and a bolt ready. I found my mark on the bottom of my tube. That's gonna center on my bow. So I'm just gonna hang that in place. I'm actually gonna allow it to just set on this end wall bow right here so my other hand is free. When I'm doing these nuts and bolts, I want to ensure that I am gonna have some threads hanging out the other side. So I wanna make sure that all of these, as I go in, are going to hang in the same direction. And I'll show you what I mean by that here in just a second when I get it secured. So we're just gonna hold it like this for a moment. Again, we're only gonna hand tighten this because we will be making some adjustments. We don't want our purlin to snake down through the middle. We want it fairly straight. Now we're just kind of free floating here. You can see 4-foot gaps, 4 plus 4 is 8 feet, 7 foot 3 inches on these purlin. You are absolutely gonna fall a little bit short of that next one. I'm gonna wiggle this down in that purlin clamp, make sure I know where my mark is with my bow. And again, I'm just gonna let that ride right there. Make sure we're in place here. Now I got my swedge connection with my saw cut connection here, and that's right in place. Go ahead and slip our purlin clamp over the center of the bow. Make some adjustments here. I'm just cradling the pipe here between my thumb, and I'm just letting it hang in there. All right, guys, so while we're working on the purlin and everything else, we do have extra hands. We are moving around a little bit. We've gone ahead. Now, if you've looked at any of our greenhouses, you know that with the 16-foot Dakota, we added a 6-foot truss to help support the span. Going out another 4 feet, we have decided that this house needs a little bit more than just a straight truss across. So we've added some supporting to the truss here, some angled truss pieces. Now these are gonna be 2 foot long. We still have the gussets for the corner. We'll discuss those in just a moment. Those are 3'3". So you will have 2 short irons here that are gonna be crimped and punched on both ends. Want to make sure that we have the 2-footers up here. So we've got our measuring tape. We're not building on a level location. Again, we have to reiterate that. So instead of putting a level on this truss, what we're gonna go ahead and do is we want to make our measurement off of our seam from our peak to the straight part of the gable. So what we've done here is we've taken our measuring tape to our tension band here for the horizontal part of our truss at 10 foot long, and we want to be 41 inches from the saw cut seam to the tension band. We want to be 41 inches. Now that will get your 10-foot truss mounted evenly where it's going to support the span. To get the angles here that we've got on these 2-foot angled truss pieces, we want to get on that saw cut seam again, and we want to measure 1 inch away from the seam. And then we want to come down here, measure from the end of our 10-foot towards the middle, and we want to be at 52 and a quarter. That's going to make sure that we have even spacing and support across our horizontal truss, that we've got the same support on the left side of our gable as we have on the right, vice versa depending on how you're staring at it. We've got everything secured. We've got a 1/2 inch socket on our gun here. We'll go ahead and draw those in. That's going to help keep everything in place. Again, we talk about the importance. You have these threaded pieces. Have these threaded pieces that are going to be hanging on the back side. We want to make sure that we've put the round head of the carriage bolt on this final end wall here. We want that round head out. The flat part of the tension band. Toss me one of those tension bands, John, real quick. If you look at our tension band, if you squeeze them together, it looks like a P. If you spread them apart to get over the tubing, it looks more kind of like an R. But we want to make sure that that flat section right there is on the outside. Again, less rough edges for our end wall film to rub on. Once you've got everything in place, go ahead and take your 1/2-inch socket, fire down on everything, and then one of the last things we'll do with all of our connections like this is we're going to take our tech screws, we're going to take our tech gun and a tech screw, and again, where we're not going to be above the bow into the main film, not on the outside where we're going to be on the end film. We want to come here on the inside of the house, and I'm going to take one tech screw and drive it just through the face of the tension band. Now, nothing's going to move that tension band. All right, so during this purling process, guys, for that middle run, we want to center it on the peak. Should just cradle right in there and nestle in nicely. For your other 2 runs of purling, what we want to do is we're going to work off these seams a lot. So I know we mentioned it, we're going to mention it in the trusses, how we're going to take measurements off the seams. If we've got our 6-inch marks on our side walls, if we've got all our ground stakes at the same level, all of our prep work up to this point, we're in a great position. So we're going to come at this saw cut joint again. We're going to go 6 inches above that and put just a little mark on the underside of the pipe right here. Now, when these guys come to help us hang the purlin, they're going to hang on a 6-inch mark all the way down the house, and that's going to help keep your purlin in line. Now, if you get done hanging your purlin and you notice that you're maybe a little low over here, a little low over there, that's the whole point in keeping everything just hand tight. Go through as you're tightening up all the nuts and bolts. A broomstick will do it if you can't just reach up there and smack it. And you can just keep that in line. It may be a little bit off your initial 6-inch mark, but that's going to give us a reference to make sure that all of our adjustments are minute instead of having to do the whole thing from scratch once we get it hanging. All right, guys, so, we talk about it. We've added different pieces to this 20-foot house. We'll make sure we've gone over it here. This is going to be the 2-foot iron, the short tubing here. That's what's going to be the support for our trussing up top. So we don't want to get that mixed up. I know it would seem obvious, but if you're just grabbing pieces out of a pile here, we've got 3'3" and we've got 2 foot. So that's going to be the truss support. Let's get that out of our way for right now. We're going to do the gusset support on the corner right here. All right, guys. Now this is going to help support the span. Again, the wider we've taken these houses, we've had to add more too. We went from the 8, 10, and 12. We went to the 16 and added a truss and gusset on the 16. We've gone a step further and widened the truss, added truss supports, and we've actually widened the gusset here from the 16 to the 20-footer. So we've gone ahead and we made a mark here on our sidewall. And we've taken this measurement from the ground up at 52 inches. So we've made our mark at 52 inches. We're preset. We're gonna go ahead and take one of our tension bands here. And again, where we're doing all this on this end wall, we wanna make sure that flat spot is what's facing out for that end wall film. With all of these tension bands on these flatten and punch materials, for the gussets and for the trussing in particular, we wanna make sure we sandwich that in between the tension band. So we're gonna do tension band, flatten and punch metal, and then back through the other side of the tension band here. Just gonna let that set for now. Hand tighten it. All right, so we've just got everything loosely fitted. I have the ability to shift it however I need. That's the importance of hand tightening everything before we get carried away. See, my mark is down here. We're gonna go ahead and drop the tension band in. Wiggle it down just a little bit. And I'm gonna set my tension band right there where it just covers up my mark. Again, we're gonna take our 1/2-inch socket. One more check before I tighten everything down. We'll go ahead and squeeze that down. And we're sitting at right about 5 inches. Now, I can adjust this tension band left side, right side. What I want is the inside of the tension band here on this 6-inch mark, or if I'm looking at the top side of the tension band here, will be 5 inches. So we'll go from that saw cut seam, pull there, and we're right in spot. And again, with doing this, guys, we're just creating some more cross support. It's gonna help support the wider span As you can see, as I lean on it, it's pulling pressure and dispersing it out a little bit sooner down the ground stake as opposed to putting all the pressure on our corners. As with every other tension band, purlin clamp that we put on our greenhouse, when we come to the inside here, we're on the final bow, so we're gonna do 45 degrees. For the rest of these, you just wanna get a good spot away from the outside wall. Now my tension band can't go up, down, left, right, or otherwise. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a little bit of a tap and kind of create a little extra pressure there. And then as I go ahead and tighten that down, it's gonna seem pretty secure, and it really is, but you know, as things go on, severe weather and things like that cause vibrations to all the house. So we wanna make sure we go ahead and get one in here as well. Once we have the tech screws in, once we have our 1/2-inch nuts tightened all the way down, this gusset's not gonna be moving anywhere. We've got these lines now where we can see them here on the lower side of the pipe. We made that 6-inch mark up from the bottom here from our saw cut joint. So what we're doing now is we wanna line our tubing up on that 6-inch mark. We wanna get the bow lined up on the 4-foot mark on the purlin. This one right here is pretty well in place, so we're gonna go ahead and hammer these down. Now I didn't go all the way to the bottom with those because we are gonna be doing some adjusting the whole way through. As soon as we're done, we'll bottom it out the rest of the way. And again, we'll drive a tech screw into the bottom of the purlin bracket. We'll show you that when we're done here. So I'm gonna try to hold this here where you can see this. Now these are 2-hole straps from the manufacturer. Get the holes on each ear. John has gone ahead and with a tech screw, so we didn't have to get a new drill bit or anything like that, but with a tech screw, John's gone ahead and pre-drilled a little bit of a hole in that strap right here in the middle. That way when he goes to secure this onto the end of the purlin, he's not gonna have to hold everything in place. He can just screw the ears into place and then get right underneath it and drive the tech screw in. So we're gonna line these lines up. We're gonna make sure our alignment is good with the end of the greenhouse. And then we're gonna hold this in place here for John to go ahead and get the 2-hole strap in. So he's gone ahead and attached the 2-hole strap to the piece of purlin here. That's gonna leave him hands-free pretty well to make sure that those ears get attached as well. All right guys, so like we discussed the purlin running down the length of the house here, if you notice, about the 3rd, 4th, and maybe even a little bit here on the 5th bow, we're a little bit out of alignment. Our final one here is not tied into place, but we're not far off our marks crossing right here. So what I'm looking at is we've got a little bit of a curve out there about the 3rd, 4th, and a little bit on this 5th. So we're gonna make some adjustments. I got a spare piece of pipe. If you leave these a little bit loose, you can do it with something as simple as a broomstick. We're gonna knock this up the hill just a little bit. We're gonna knock this one back downhill just a little bit. And then we're gonna do the 3rd one as well. Of course, we're gonna step back and make sure that we've made these adjustments where we'd like them. And you may have to do this just a couple different times to really get everything in line so it looks the way you want it to with your eyes. But the gussets up, we've got the bow material up, the trussing, all the truss bracing and all the purlin, everything's up and secured. So we're gonna move on now. The next steps that we're gonna get to on the build here, we're gonna do our end wall kits. We're gonna get our hip boards and our foot boards placed on this greenhouse. Before we get too carried away, we wanna talk about this little white strip here. It's gonna be in your hardware box. It's gonna come in a large roll. We've cut them here at 18 inches. And what we wanna do with these, they're adhesive on one side, you've got the paper, and then the felt. And so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna put this on the corners and the peak of every bow except for your first and last bow where your end walls are gonna be. The reason for that is you're gonna have wire base that goes over these bows. That's what's gonna secure your film in. The purpose of this felt tape is to sit on these sharper corners that we've built into the Dakota here. We don't want the film to really press into these and be rubbing and cause holes or anything. So we've got this nice felt tape. Again, 18 inches on this strip here. And what I'm gonna do is it's just gotta cover the corner here. Now what we're trying to cover is only about 8 to 12 inches. So we're just gonna split the difference on this, get a little bit on the flat part of the bow, and we're just gonna come straight down the bow, over to the sidewall part of the corner here. We're just gonna lay that against the metal. Now with that one adhesive side, you're gonna be left with a felt side out. when the film presses against that, as we put the tension on it and get all our wrinkles worked out, that's gonna keep it from being a poly on metal connection there. It's gonna put the felt in between and give it a little something softer to rub against in all the weather and wind and movement we're gonna have.